Emma had always known she was different. From the moment she could remember, there was something about her that didn't quite fit with the other kids in her small, quiet town. But her adoptive parents, who had taken her in when she was just a baby, never treated her any differently. To them, she was their daughter, as real and as loved as any child could be. They didn't care about the oddities that surrounded her. They just cared about her. It started small, barely noticeable at first. Emma had an uncanny ability to heal from minor cuts and bruises within hours, sometimes minutes. She once sprained her ankle during a rough game of soccer, but by the next day, she was running again like nothing had happened. At first, her parents chalked it up to good genes, or perhaps just a naturally strong immune system. After all, people healed at different rates, didn't they? But as Emma grew older, the differences became harder to ignore. Her senses were sharper than anyone she knew. She could hear conversations from rooms away, and sometimes even whispers carried by the wind seemed to echo in her ears. She could smell the faintest trace of rain on the breeze long before the clouds gathered, and her eyes could pick out the smallest movements in the corner of her vision. It wasn't just a heightened awareness, it was something more. It was as if her entire body was tuned to the world in a way that no one else's was. Her friends would often ask her how she did it. How do you always know when someone's behind you? They'd tease, or how do you hear the teachers whisper from all the way across the room? Emma didn't have answers. She would smile, shrug, and try to make light of it. But the truth was, she didn't know why. She had never met anyone else who could do the same things. The idea of being normal felt like a distant dream she wasn't sure she could ever reach. Then there were the dreams. Vivid, strange dreams that seemed to pull her out of her bed and into faraway places. In one, she was running through dense forests, faster than any human could. In another, she was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring out over a vast city she had never seen. The dreams were always fleeting, but when she woke up, they stayed with her, leaving her with a sense of déjà vu that made her question reality. Were they memories of a life she couldn't recall? Or were they just the wild imaginings of her mind? One evening, as she was walking home from a late shift at the local cafe, something happened that changed everything. The sun had set, leaving a deep purple sky above the trees, and the streets were quiet. Emma loved this time of night, when the world seemed to slow down, and she could walk in peace. But that evening, as she passed the edge of the woods near her house, she felt a prickling sensation at the back of her neck. A figure stood by the trees, almost blending into the shadows. A man, tall and unremarkable in his appearance. Yet his eyes were anything but ordinary. They were sharp, like he could see right through her. As Emma stopped in her tracks, the man took a step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're not like them," he said, his voice low and calm, as though he were speaking an undeniable truth. Emma froze. Her heart skipped a beat, and for the first time in her life, she felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Not fear of the man, but fear of what his words might mean. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could form a question, he was gone, melting into the trees as if he had never been there at all. Emma stood there for a long moment, the night air suddenly colder around her. The man's words echoed in her mind. "You're not like them." What did he mean? Who was he? And why did she feel like she already knew the answer? She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. The town, her friends, her family, they were all she needed to know who she was. Or so she thought. The encounter with the stranger lingered in Emma's mind long after she arrived home that evening. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just an odd moment, maybe a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. But the words, "You're not like them," kept coming back, repeating in her mind like a haunting melody. Who was that man? And how did he know? She tried to ignore it, but the mystery gnawed at her, growing more persistent as the days went on. In the weeks that followed, life in the town continued as usual. Emma went to school, hung out with her friends, and spent time with her parents. She even helped out at the cafe a few nights a week, making coffee and serving pastries with a smile. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but beneath the routine, something inside Emma had changed. It wasn't just the man's cryptic words. It was the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something bigger, something she couldn't quite grasp. Her senses seemed more attuned than ever. She noticed the way people's eyes would flicker nervously when they spoke to her, or how the air around her seemed to thrum with energy. Something was shifting, and Emma couldn't ignore it. Then, one night, it happened again. Emma was walking home from the cafe after a late shift. The streets were empty, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, casting long shadows across the pavement. As she passed the same spot near the woods, she felt that all too familiar prickling sensation along the back of her neck. It was as if someone, or something, was watching her, and she wasn't alone. This time, she didn't hesitate. She turned, her eyes scanning the trees for any sign of movement. At first, she saw nothing. The woods were quiet, the only sound the distant rustling of leaves in the breeze. But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a figure standing at the edge of the trees. The same figure as before, the same intensity in his gaze. He was watching her, unmoving, as if waiting for her to approach. Emma's heart raced. She knew she should be scared, but strangely, she wasn't. Instead, a curious sense of familiarity washed over her. It was almost as though she recognized the man, even though she had never seen him before. She took a step forward, unsure of what to do. Her mind screamed at her to run, to get away, but something deep inside told her to stay, to find out what this man wanted. He didn't speak at first. He simply watched her with those piercing eyes, as if weighing her every move. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stepped forward, his voice breaking the silence. "Your DNA, it's different. You know that, don't you?" Emma's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't told anyone about her oddities, not in any real sense. Sure, her parents knew about her fast healing and heightened senses, but they always attributed it to being one of those rare things in life. No one had ever questioned it beyond that. Yet here this man was, standing in front of her, as though he knew something no one else did. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He took another step toward her, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the street lamp. "You're not like the others. You were born here, yes, but your origins, they're not purely human." Emma's head spun. She wanted to ask him what he meant, to demand answers, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she found herself taking a step back, her instinct telling her to flee. But before she could turn and run, the man raised a hand. "I'm not here to harm you," he said, his voice strangely reassuring. "I'm here to help you understand." Help her understand. Understand what? Emma was flooded with questions, confusion clouding her mind. But the one thing she was sure of was that this encounter, this moment, was no accident. It wasn't just a coincidence that she had crossed paths with this stranger twice. The universe, or fate, or whatever it was, had led her here. And now she had no choice but to listen. "Why me?" Emma finally asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Why are you telling me this?" The man's expression softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of something almost sympathetic in his eyes. "Because you're ready. The answers are inside you, Emma. You've always known there was something different about you. Now it's time to find out what that is." He paused, looking around as if checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, he added, "You were never meant to live an ordinary life. And soon, you'll understand why." Before Emma could ask any more questions, the man turned and vanished into the woods, disappearing as quickly as he had appeared. Emma stood there, stunned, her mind racing with the weight of what had just happened. The words he had spoken echoed in her mind, and though she didn't understand everything he had said, she knew one thing for sure: nothing in her life would ever be the same again. The following days felt like a blur to Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about the stranger and the unsettling truth he had revealed. "You were never meant to live an ordinary life." His words haunted her, turning her world upside down. What did he mean? What was different about her? Why had he come into her life now, after all these years? At first, she tried to push it all aside, convincing herself that it was just a coincidence, just some strange encounter. But deep down, Emma knew it wasn't. The feeling in her gut told her this man, this mysterious stranger, had spoken the truth. Something inside her was different. But how different? And why? Her adoptive parents noticed the change in her too. Emma had always been close to them, and they could tell something was off. They were concerned, but they didn't know how to help her. She found herself retreating into her thoughts, replaying every moment of her encounter with the man in the woods over and over again. It wasn't until she began having strange dreams that she knew she had to find answers. In her dreams, she was no longer in the familiar town she had known her entire life. Instead, she stood in vast alien landscapes, surrounded by structures that seemed to pulse with energy. The air was thick with a strange hum, and in the distance, she could hear the sound of voices speaking a language she didn't understand. These dreams felt real, too real. They were more than mere visions. They were like memories, memories she couldn't access while awake. One night, as she sat up in bed, drenched in sweat after another vivid dream, she decided that enough was enough. She couldn't keep ignoring the signs. She had to know the truth. The next day, she made an appointment with Dr. Klein, a geneticist who had recently moved to the area to study local biodiversity. Emma had seen him around town, and she knew he was a scientist with a reputation for seeking out the unknown. She wasn't sure what to expect, but at this point, she was desperate. She needed answers. When she sat down across from Dr. Klein in his small, cluttered office, she felt a sense of both fear and hope. Fear of what she might learn, but hope that she might finally understand what had been happening to her all these years. "Dr. Klein, I need your help," she began, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I think something's wrong with me. I've always been different. I don't know how to explain it, but I've never felt like I fit in. And recently, I've been having these dreams, and I met someone who said I wasn't human. I need to know what's going on with me." Dr. Klein listened carefully, his expression thoughtful but not dismissive. He didn't interrupt her, letting her spill out her confusion and fear. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "This is quite a lot to process," he said slowly. "But from what you're describing, it sounds like you're experiencing something extraordinary, something outside the realm of what we know about human biology." His eyes narrowed, as though considering something he hadn't fully said out loud yet. "Have you ever had genetic testing done before?" Emma shook her head. "No, I've never thought I needed to." "Well, perhaps it's time we change that," Dr. Klein said, standing up. "I'd like to run a few tests on you. Just some basic blood work, genetic samples, nothing invasive. If you're truly different, I'll be able to tell." Emma hesitated, unsure if she was ready for what the tests might reveal. But deep down, she knew she had to follow through. She had to know who, or what, she was. A few days later, Emma returned to Dr. Klein's lab, where she underwent a series of tests. Blood samples, scans, and a comprehensive analysis of her DNA. The process was methodical, precise, but Emma felt a growing sense of unease. What would they find? Was there something wrong with her? As the days passed, Emma tried to distract herself with everyday life, but she couldn't shake the feeling of dread building inside her. She knew that soon, the truth would come out, and when it did, she wasn't sure how she would handle it. Then, finally, the call came. "Emma, it's Dr. Klein." His voice was steady but had an edge of something Emma couldn't quite place. "You need to come in. We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. She knew, deep down, that the tests had revealed something she wasn't ready to hear. When Emma arrived at Dr. Klein's office, He didn't waste any time. He handed her a printed copy of her genetic report, his eyes never leaving her face. "I've never seen anything like this before," he said softly, his voice tinged with awe. "Your DNA, it's not entirely human. There are sequences here that shouldn't exist, at least not in any human genome we've ever studied." Emma stared at the report in disbelief. The words on the paper were like a foreign language. But the one thing she understood was that she was not the person she had thought she was. Not entirely. "You weren't born like the others, Emma," Dr. Klein continued, his tone a mix of wonder and concern. "Your genetics, they're unlike anything I've ever encountered. You are different, and whatever that means, it's something we need to understand." Emma felt the world tilt beneath her feet. For the first time in her life, the ground she stood on felt uncertain. The days following Dr. Klein's revelation passed in a blur. Emma couldn't focus on anything. Her thoughts kept returning to the words on the genetic report. "You are different." What did that even mean? She had always felt out of place, but now it seemed like her entire identity was being called into question. If her DNA was unlike anything human, then who was she? And more importantly, what was she supposed to do about it? She spent hours at night staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the swirling thoughts in her head. The dreams had only become more vivid since the test results. In one, she stood in a place that looked like a high-tech laboratory, surrounded by screens displaying data she couldn't understand. In another, she was walking alongside a figure she couldn't quite make out, someone who seemed to be guiding her towards something important. Every time she woke up, she felt a sense of urgency, like she was being pulled towards something she didn't yet comprehend. Emma had no answers, only questions that seemed to multiply the more she thought about it. She didn't want to tell their parents. What could she say to them? She couldn't even explain what was happening to herself. But one evening, as she sat in the kitchen, her mother, noticing the deep lines of worry on Emma's face, gently sat beside her. "Honey, you've been so distant lately," her mom said, concern in her eyes. "Is something bothering you? You know you can talk to us." Emma opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. She wanted to tell her mother everything. About the stranger, the genetic tests, the dreams, the feeling that something was terribly wrong. But she didn't know where to start, or if it would even make sense. Her mother reached out, placing a hand on hers. "You're our daughter. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." That was all Emma needed. She didn't know how or when it happened, but somehow, in that moment, she realized that her family wasn't afraid of her. Not because of her biology, not because of her differences. They loved her for who she was, and nothing else mattered. That night, Emma called Dr. Klein. She needed to talk to him. She needed answers. The next morning, she arrived at his office, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Dr. Klein was waiting for her, his face serious but open. He motioned for her to sit down, and once she was settled, he slid a folder across the desk toward her. "I've gone through your genetic data again," he said, his voice calm. "There's a lot we still don't understand, but one thing is clear. Your genetic structure contains elements that could be described as extraterrestrial." Emma felt her stomach lurch. Extraterrestrial. How was that even possible? The idea that she wasn't fully human had felt surreal, but this was something else entirely. "I know this is overwhelming," Dr. Klein continued, "but we have to acknowledge that your origins might not be entirely earthbound. It's possible you were made." Emma finished, her voice trembling. "You're saying I wasn't born like other people, that I'm not human." Dr. Klein's eyes softened, though his expression remained serious. "Not in the way you think. Your biological makeup is something entirely new, something that doesn't fit within the scope of human genetics as we understand it. But that doesn't make you any less of a person." Emma shook her head. "I don't feel like a person anymore. I don't feel human. How can I? I'm not even from Earth." Dr. Klein leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. What makes a person human, Emma? Is it the DNA, the blood running through your veins? Or is it the choices you make, the way you treat others, the way you live your life? Emma was silent for a long time. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that the essence of who she was could transcend her genetic makeup. But it was hard. She had spent her entire life defining herself by what was outwardly visible, by the way she looked, the way she fit in. Now, all of that seemed irrelevant. "Look," Dr. Klein said, breaking the silence. "We don't know where you came from. But we do know this. You are capable of great things. And just because you have different biology doesn't mean you're any less human. You are still you. What matters now is what you choose to do with this knowledge." The weight of his words sank in. Emma had always thought being human meant fitting in, being ordinary. But what if being human was about something deeper? Was it about how we choose to love, how we choose to act? Could she still be human if she didn't understand her origins? "I don't have all the answers," Dr. Klein added. "But I do believe this. You have the power to shape your own story. You can decide what kind of person you want to be, regardless of where you came from." Emma sat back in her chair, her mind racing. It wasn't the answer she had hoped for, but it was an answer. She had always believed that who she was could be defined by what others saw in her, by the family who had raised her, the friends she had made, and the world she had grown up in. Maybe that was enough. For the first time in days, Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. What mattered was that she could choose who she wanted to be. And that was something no one could take away from her. As the days passed, Emma found herself caught between two worlds, the one she had always known, and the mysterious new world her genetic origins were pulling her toward. Dr. Klein's words echoed in her mind. What makes a person human? The question nagged at her, reminding her that while she had always believed humanity was defined by biology, maybe it wasn't so simple. Maybe it was about something deeper, something intangible. And if that was true, maybe she could still find her place in this world, even if she didn't fully understand who she was. But the more she thought about it, the more the strange dreams began to invade her waking hours. Each night, the visions became more vivid, more urgent. The figure in her dreams, the one who had been guiding her, seemed to be calling her to something, to some unknown purpose. The sense of familiarity she felt with this figure was growing stronger, like she had known them her entire life, even though she couldn't remember ever meeting them. One morning, Emma woke up with a start, the remnants of the dream still fresh in her mind. The figure had spoken to her this time, their voice echoing in her head, clear and urgent. "Find the place. It is the key." Emma's breath caught in her throat as the words replayed in her mind. She had no idea what the place meant, but the dream had left her with a deep sense of knowing. It was as though she had to go, that something important was waiting for her, something that could change everything. Without thinking twice, she grabbed her jacket and headed out the door. She had no idea where she was going, but somehow, she knew she had to follow the feeling in her gut. The pull was undeniable. The figure in her dream had shown her glimpses of a landscape, distant mountains, vast open fields, and towering structures unlike anything she had ever seen before. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that these weren't just dreams. They were memories. But memories of what? And where? As she drove through the winding roads of her town, Emma felt an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. She had never felt this way before. So certain, so driven. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she was determined to find it. It wasn't until she reached the outskirts of town, where the trees thinned out and the land opened up into wide, unbroken fields, that Emma saw it. A building half hidden by the trees, its sleek, metallic structure gleaming in the sunlight. It looked almost like something from another world. Her heart raced as she pulled the car to the side of the road and stepped out, her mind screaming at her to run, to turn back. But she couldn't. The pull was too strong. The building was set back a little from the road, nestled into a small valley. As she approached, the air seemed to hum with energy, as though the very earth was alive with something ancient and powerful. She could feel it in her bones. The entrance to the building was a large, arching door, made of the same strange metallic material that covered the rest of the structure. There were no signs, no indication of what the building was or who owned it. But Emma didn't need to know. She knew this was the place. This was what her dreams had been trying to lead her to. She stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The interior of the building was vast, open, and eerily silent. The walls were lined with glowing panels that flickered occasionally, casting strange shadows across the room. The air smelled faintly of something electrical, like static. The sense of familiarity intensified as she walked deeper into the structure, but it was more than just recognition. It was as though she had been here before, that she was meant to be here. As she walked farther into the building, Emma saw something on the far side of the room. A figure, standing with their back to her. Her breath caught in her throat as the figure slowly turned to face her. It was the person from her dreams, the one who had been guiding her, the one who had seemed so familiar. Now, standing before her in the flesh, the figure was even more striking than she had imagined. They wore a dark suit, their features sharp and angular, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Emma," the figure said, their voice deep and resonant, just like it had been in her dreams. "You've come. It's time to remember." Emma's body froze as she stared at them. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why am I here?" The figure took a step closer, their eyes never leaving hers. "You are here because you've always been meant to be. This place is where you come from. This is where your story begins." Suddenly, memories, fragments of a life she had never lived, flashed through Emma's mind. She saw images of a place far away, a civilization that thrived in a world filled with advanced technology. She saw herself, not as she was now, but as someone else, a different version of herself, standing tall and strong, surrounded by people who looked just like her. They were all the same, all from the same place. The figure stepped closer, and Emma could now see their face clearly. It was almost identical to hers. "You were born in another world," the figure said. "A world far from here. You were sent to Earth to hide, to learn, to grow. But now the time has come for you to remember who you really are." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Everything was changing, and the truth of her existence, her real existence, was finally coming to light. The figure before Emma continued to stand silently, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the room. Emma felt as though her world had shifted, like the ground had fallen away beneath her feet. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. The weight of the truth that was being revealed pressed down on her, suffocating her. "I'm not human?" she asked, her voice barely audible, as if she couldn't quite believe the words coming out of her mouth. The figure nodded slowly. "No, Emma, you were never truly human. You were created, born in a faraway place, but you were sent here, to Earth, for a reason. And that reason is now coming to light." Emma's mind spun as she tried to process the enormity of what she was being told. Her entire life, everything she had known, everything she had believed, felt like a lie. She had spent so long questioning what was different about her. But this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "Why? Why was I sent here? And who are you?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. The figure's expression softened, and they stepped closer, their presence overwhelming yet oddly calming. "I am one of the others, a part of the same creation that made you. We are not of Earth, but we have watched over this planet for centuries. We have guided those like you, those who are different, who have been sent here for a purpose." Emma's mind raced, trying to fit the pieces together. "You mean there are more of us? People like me?" The figure nodded. "Yes, you are not the first, and you will not be the last. But you, Emma, are different. You are one of the last of our kind, a key to a much greater future. Your arrival here was no accident. Emma's heart raced. A key to what? The figure's gaze grew intense, and they looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and hope. To the survival of both your world and ours. For centuries, we have remained hidden, living in the shadows of Earth's history. But now things are changing. There are forces at work, forces that will try to destroy this planet and everything you know. You and others like you are the only ones who can stop it. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Her legs wobbled beneath her, and she had to steady herself against the wall. The idea that she, someone who had only ever felt out of place, who had always wondered where she truly belonged, could hold the power to save the world was too much to grasp. I don't understand. How am I supposed to stop whatever it is that's coming? She whispered, her voice cracking with doubt. I'm just one person. I don't have any special powers. The figure stepped even closer, their gaze locking with hers. You have more power than you know, Emma. Your abilities, the heightened senses, the healing, the strange connection you feel to the world around you, are part of what makes you who you are. They are the remnants of our technology, the gifts we've woven into your very being. But there's more. You are a bridge between your world and ours. You can access abilities that have been locked away in your DNA. Emma shook her head in disbelief. She had always known she was different. But this was beyond her understanding. But if I'm supposed to help, why hasn't anyone told me this before? The figure's eyes darkened, a flicker of regret passing across their face. We tried, but the time wasn't right. You had to grow, to become ready. There are forces on Earth, forces that want to control you, to use you for their own purposes. They've been watching, waiting for the moment when you would discover the truth. Emma felt her stomach churn at the thought of being hunted. Who are they? Who's trying to control me? The figure paused before answering. Those who have learned of our existence. Some seek power, some seek knowledge, but all of them are dangerous. They are the ones who have been keeping the truth hidden for so long. They are the reason your memories have been sealed, why you've been kept in the dark. They are the ones who will stop at nothing to use your abilities for their own gain. The room felt suddenly colder, the air heavy with the weight of the figure's words. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, her thoughts racing. She had been living in a world full of hidden dangers, unaware of the forces that had been controlling her life, pulling the strings in the background. And now she was a part of it. She couldn't go back to the life she had known before. She had a purpose now, a responsibility to a world she had never truly known. But she had no idea how to navigate it. What do I do now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The figure reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Now you train. You learn to unlock the full potential of your abilities. You must prepare for what is to come. The world is not as simple as it seems, Emma. There are greater forces at play, and you are at the center of it all. Emma swallowed hard, her throat tight with fear and uncertainty. She had always wanted answers, but now that she had them, they seemed more terrifying than anything she had imagined. The world was changing, and she was about to become a part of something much bigger than herself. The question was, could she rise to meet it? Could she truly live up to the purpose that had been hidden inside her all along? Emma stood still as the figure's words echoed in her mind, their weight settling into her chest like a stone. She had never been a fighter. She had always avoided conflict, preferring to stay on the sidelines, unnoticed. But now she was being told that everything she had known was a lie, that she had a purpose far greater than she could have imagined. She wasn't just an ordinary girl. She was part of something that had been planned for centuries. The figure before her, someone who appeared to be from another world, spoke again, breaking her spiraling thoughts. The training will not be easy, but you are stronger than you think. The abilities inside you, they are already waking up, but they need to be unlocked. It will take time, patience, and trust in yourself. Emma swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation slowly sinking in. How do I unlock them? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. The figure's eyes softened. You will need to tap into your inner self. Your abilities are not just physical. They are tied to your emotions, your connection to this world. You must learn to control them, or they will control you. Emma felt a strange sensation stir within her, a warmth radiating from the depths of her chest, as though something inside her was stirring, stretching awake from a long slumber. She had felt it before, in fleeting moments when her senses had been sharper than normal, when she had felt a strange connection to things around her that she couldn't explain. But now, it was different, stronger, more alive. The figure continued, their voice low and steady. We can help you, but it is ultimately up to you to awaken what lies within. We will guide you through the process, but you must be willing to face the darkness inside you. Emma's heart thudded in her chest. Darkness? What darkness? Before she could ask, the figure raised a hand, and the room around them began to shift. The walls melted away, dissolving into a vast expanse of stars. The ground beneath her feet vanished, and Emma found herself floating in the middle of an endless void, surrounded by the glowing light of distant galaxies. It was breathtaking and terrifying. Focus, the figure commanded. Feel the power within you. Reach for it. Emma closed her eyes, trying to calm the swirling chaos inside her. She reached deep within, searching for that strange energy that had been bubbling under the surface ever since the first moment she had learned the truth. The more she concentrated, the stronger the sensation became. It was as though a door was opening, a flood of energy rushing toward her, calling her name. Suddenly, it hit her, a flash of memories, not of her life on Earth, but of a place far, far away. She saw herself, standing before a great council of beings, her features identical to the figure before her. They were speaking to her, whispers of power, of purpose. The memory was blurry, fragmented, but Emma could feel it in her bones. She had been part of something much greater. She had been trained before. She had been someone else, someone powerful. Emma gasped, her eyes snapping open. The stars around her began to swirl, forming shapes, images, pathways. The energy within her surged, and for the briefest moment, she felt as though she could touch the very fabric of the universe. It was overwhelming, and she had to fight to stay grounded. Open your eyes. The figure's voice broke through, firm but reassuring. This is your reality now. You are no longer just Emma. You are the bridge between two worlds, the guardian of both. It is time to embrace what you are. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the power settle around her, within her. The universe seemed to shift, aligning in a way that she couldn't fully comprehend. But it felt right. The light in the distance grew brighter, and in that moment, Emma understood something. The journey ahead would be painful, full of challenges, and fraught with danger. But she had to face it, for the sake of the world she had come to know, for the people she loved, and for the world that had made her who she was. Her feet returned to solid ground, and the stars faded, leaving her standing back inside the strange building. The figure was still before her, watching with a quiet intensity. Emma's heart was racing, but she felt more alive than she had ever felt before. She had unlocked something deep within herself, a power, a knowledge that had been dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Now you understand, the figure said, their tone softening. You are ready. Ready? Emma wasn't sure she felt ready, but she knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. The person she had been was gone. The girl who had been confused and lost had been replaced by someone who had a purpose, a mission, and the time to start fulfilling it had arrived. Where do we go from here? Emma asked, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of the unknown. The figure looked at her with a hint of pride. Now we find the others. You are not alone in this. There are others like you, and together you will face the coming storm. As the figure turned and led the way deeper into the building, Emma felt a sense of determination settle in her chest. She didn't know what was ahead, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to run anymore. She would embrace her power, her destiny, and whatever came with it. For the first time in her life, Emma was ready to fight. Emma followed the figure through the vast corridors of the mysterious building, the air heavy with anticipation. She had never felt so awake, so fully aware of her purpose. Each step felt like a step away from the life she had known, and closer to something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. She wasn't just Emma anymore. She was something else, someone else, and that realization both terrified and exhilarated her. The figure led her into a large room, its walls lined with glowing panels and strange symbols she didn't understand. At the center of the room stood a console, sleek and futuristic, almost alive with energy. It hummed softly, vibrating with a power Emma could feel in her bones. This was where it all came together, she realized. The beginning of everything that had been hidden from her. The figure stopped in front of the console, turning to face her. Their expression was serious, but there was a flicker of something else, something like pride, mixed with an underlying urgency. "You have come far, Emma," the figure said, their voice filled with quiet resolve. "But there is one last trial you must face. The forces that threaten both Earth and our world are powerful. You have already felt their presence, but the true challenge is not just facing them. It is understanding that you are the key to ending this." Emma felt a shiver of apprehension run through her. She had already learned so much, and the stakes were higher than ever. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. The figure stepped aside, gesturing toward the console. "This is where your journey comes to a crossroads. The console contains a choice, your choice. You must decide if you are willing to fully embrace your role in this war. You will gain all the power needed to defeat our enemies, to unlock your full potential. But it comes with a cost." Emma's heart raced. The weight of the decision settled on her shoulders like a heavy mantle. She had felt the power within her, had tasted it, but she had no idea what it would truly mean to embrace it fully. What was the cost? Was she prepared to pay it? The figure continued, their tone solemn. "You have the power to defeat them, but not without sacrifice. If you choose to wield this power, it will consume you. It will take everything you are, your memories, your identity. You will become more than human, but you will lose the connection to the life you once had. You will be a vessel of power, a weapon, a force of nature, but there will be no going back." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The idea of losing herself, the person she was, the memory she held so dear, was terrifying. She had just started to understand who she was, to accept the truth of her origins. But could she truly let go of everything she had known? Was she willing to become someone else entirely in order to save the world? The console before her flickered, showing a vision of a vast battlefield, chaos and destruction all around. Dark figures moved, their forms shadowy and menacing, closing in on a group of people. The vision shifted, showing a glowing figure, Emma, or someone like her, standing at the center, radiating light, her eyes glowing with power as she held off the darkness. She could feel the weight of the battle, the strain of fighting alone. She could feel herself stretching, pushing against the force that sought to destroy everything. But in the end, the vision showed a moment of utter exhaustion, her body breaking, her energy fading as she gave everything she had. Tears stung Emma's eyes as the vision faded. She wasn't sure she could do this. She wasn't sure she wanted to give up everything. But there was something else too. In the deepest part of her soul, she felt a stirring, a call to protect, to fight for what was good and right, to stand against the darkness. She turned to the figure, her eyes searching for any sign of reassurance. "What happens if I don't choose this power? What if I walk away?" The figure's expression softened, but their eyes were heavy with sorrow. "If you walk away, the war will continue. The forces aligned against us will grow stronger, and Earth will be left vulnerable. You will remain human, but you will be helpless to stop the destruction that will follow. You will watch as your world crumbles, as the people you love are taken from you." Emma's stomach churned. The weight of the choice pressed against her chest, threatening to crush her. But there was something in the way the figure spoke, something in the way they looked at her, that made her understand. This wasn't just about her. This was about everyone. The stakes were bigger than she could have ever imagined. She looked down at the console, at the glowing interface that seemed to pulse with an energy she couldn't quite comprehend. She felt the power inside her, stirring once again, begging to be released. She was being asked to make a choice that would define not just her future, but the fate of the world. Without speaking, Emma stepped forward and placed her hand on the console. The energy surged through her, a flood of light and power that coursed through her veins. For a moment, she felt as though she were no longer herself. She felt infinite, boundless, like she could do anything. But then the cost became clear. The memories, her memories, began to fade, slipping through her fingers like water. Her life on Earth, the people she had loved, the world she had known, all of it seemed to dissolve, replaced by an overwhelming sense of duty. But despite the loss, one thing remained: her purpose. Emma looked up at the figure, her eyes shining with newfound resolve. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. And as the power inside her swelled, she knew that whatever the cost, she would face it, because she had no choice but to fight. For the world, for the people she loved, for everything.